Member for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to all of our witnesses, including Sheriff Wagner from my home state of Washington. Good to see you here. Perhaps the chairman would have this level of concern for the victims of senseless gun violence across this country. 47,000 people who were killed from gun violence just in 1 year alone. Or perhaps the chairman would have this level of concern for the families of law enforcement that were killed during the January 6th insurrection on the United States Capitol, or even the families that are suffering from rising grocery prices and devastated retirement accounts thanks to Donald Trump's chaotic economic policy. Ever since Donald Trump came into office, my colleagues have been very happy to sit back and let him run completely roughshod over our laws. President Trump, Tom Homan, Stephen Miller, all led you to believe that this attack on immigrants was supposed to be about criminal immigrants. It was supposed to be about people who threaten public safety, despite the fact that research clearly shows that immigrants commit fewer crimes than Americans. They actually led you to believe that they were for the immigrants who did things legally. I can't tell you how many times on this committee I've sat here as my Republican colleagues say, we're not against legal immigration, we're for the people who do things legally. They led you to believe that legal immigrants had nothing to worry about, people on permanent residence status or legal visas or legal status. They even led you to believe that somehow getting rid of immigrants would be good for American jobs, that it would bring down costs for the American public, and that this was all about caring for you versus them, some shady criminal immigrant that might be invading our communities. Well, as people's 401k accounts plummet with Trump's economic policies, as costs of everything that Americans need to buy keep going up instead of down, the effects of Trump's unconstitutional and unlawful actions against all immigrants are causing fear and havoc in our communities across the country. Let me be clear. Trump has targeted immigrants who are here lawfully, suspending refugee admissions, a program that, by the way, was once hailed by both Republicans and Democrats and the faith community everywhere as the cornerstone of humanitarian assistance. They are revoking the very programs that created legal pathways for immigrants to enter, that effectively brought down the numbers at the border. And in revoking student visas and green cards of legal permanent residents, many of whom are married to U.S. citizens, they are going after every single immigrant in America, fabricating stories about these immigrants being, quote, criminals, even deporting them to other countries in violation of judicial orders. All of this leads us to ask once again, as the Fourth Circuit said earlier this week, in the case of a Maryland father who was, quote, mistakenly deported to a Salvadorian prison by the Trump administration. If due process is of no moment, what is stopping the government from refusing and removing to return a lawful permanent resident or even a natural-born citizen? That is a quote from the judge in the decision. This obsession to weaponize every part of the U.S. government against immigrants is hurting Americans. It's taking away critical resources for crime prevention and counterterrorism, drug interdiction, and other law enforcement at the Department of Justice and Homeland Security investigations, and it's terrorizing immigrants and their U.S. citizen family members, including those with no criminal background and with legal status. Now, the Trump administration wants to coerce state and local law enforcement to help them round up immigrants by threatening to cut off their transportation and law enforcement funds if they don't comply, even though multiple courts have held that this is illegal, and numerous research studies and law enforcement officials have confirmed that keeping the long-standing distinction between federal immigration and local law enforcement actually helps keep communities safer. In 2019, my home state of Washington passed the Keep Washington Working Act with bipartisan support. It's a common sense law to ensure that local policy remains focused on public safety of all residents rather than enforcing federal immigration law. We know that when local police act as immigration agents, immigrant communities and their families are less likely to come forward to report a crime when they are a witness or even a victim. It destroys the trust that police rely on to preserve public safety in communities. Courts have ruled multiple times that states have the right to enact laws like Keep Washington Working Act. And despite what you might hear today, the law does allow information sharing with the federal government when necessary for an ongoing criminal investigation or pursuant to a court order or a judicial warrant. As the Trump administration continues to bully and intimidate the country to bend the knee, we won't be intimidated. And I fully support Attorney General Nick Brown's efforts to ensure that everyone in our state follows our laws. The Major City Chiefs Association has repeatedly reaffirmed that across the country, if law enforcement officers are viewed by members of the immigrant community as colluding or working with immigration law enforcement officers, this would, and this is a quote, result in increased crime against immigrants in the broader community, create a class of silent victims, and eliminate the potential for assistance from immigrants in solving crimes or preventing future terrorist acts. The Major Cities Chiefs Association has also explained that cooperation with the immigrant community is a crucial part of solving crime and preventing further criminal activity within the entire community, including ensuring protections for victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. Instead of trashing the rights of every American and destroying communities in our economy, this subcommittee should be holding hearings on why Mahmoud Khalil remains detained, simply for expressing pro-Palestinian views that Donald Trump doesn't like, or why Alfredo Juarez, a longtime labor leader, has been detained in my state of Washington, apparently simply for organizing farm workers for fairer wages, or why a local roofing company just had a raid where 37 immigrants who are longtime residents in our state building affordable housing for our communities were all picked up and jailed, or why the administration refuses to return Kilmar Abrego Garcia to the United States to reunite with his U.S. citizen wife and his 3 children, even after admitting to mistakenly deporting him to a Salvadorian gulag where he fears for his life. Let's have a hearing, Mr. Chairman, on the disappearing and the kidnapping of people across this country, instead of hurting public safety for all Americans by undermining trust policies of local jurisdictions. I yield back.
The lady yields back. The chair is now pleased to recognize the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Jordan, for his opening statement.
I think the chairman, here's how it works. I send a detainer to the local sheriff or the local police chief.